All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again at the Authors Impact Hub podcast. We have been going strong with our author Q&As. I am your host, Juanita Woodson, founder of the Authors Impact Hub. And tonight we have one of our amazing community members on with us, Angela Harvey. Super excited to learn more about her books and also the amazing things that she does in the community. So, as always, I let the authors do their own introduction, right? I don't think that anybody can tell of us better than we can. So, if you can, just give us a little bit about yourself, where you are from, and the title of the book we'll be discussing.
Okay, then. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much. I am so honored to be here. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Angela Harvey, and I am from Cleveland, Ohio, currently living in Wake Forest, North Carolina. I'm a social worker and a facilitator, a public speaker, and I'm also a poet and an author, a filmmaker. I always forget that. And I have two books out now. One is called Poetic Alchemy, Seven Intentions for Healing, Growth, and Transformation. And then there is A Transformed Heart, which is a book of poetry. And then I have an adult coloring book called Colorful Growth. And all of those things have happened in the last year and a half. It's just been amazing. And I love what I do. I love helping grown folks grow up, and I love being able to use my experiences and my transformations, my healing, my growth to be able to help others do the same.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And if you just take a look in the background, well, if you're listening, you won't be able to see it. But if you watch the video on YouTube, you'll be able to see Angela's background and the things that she has going on. So I absolutely love that. So, what inspired, right? What inspired you to say, hey, I am going to write a book?
Oh boy. So initially I had these poems that I wrote as I exited a relationship, and it was not my thought that I would be, putting a book together for sure. Um, And I think when it came to me, my thought was I knew that I would write a book. I just didn't know what the book would be about. I knew it would be a self-help book in some respects. And so once I started doing some research and found out there wasn't a whole lot of poetry self-help books, although I believe poetry itself is self-helping, it was a new a new genre, if you will. And I thought, okay, then Angie, you could do this. I thought that until I actually got into it, and I was like, oh, this is a lot of work. And the work was
Yeah.
just coming up with the intentions, the questions, the prompts. The work was having to relive it myself in order
Yeah.
to get there. But I knew once God gave me the assignment to do it, that this is what was supposed to be my first book. I knew I would get it done. I just didn't know when. And to be quite honest, I didn't know that I would be physically present on this earth when it did happen. Lots and lots of things going on personally. But it happened. I'm still here and the book is out. But it was that. It was what was assigned to me to do, again, to use some of my life and some of my experiences to be able to help other people out.
Yes, absolutely. And talk about like, right, being able to see your legacy created, right? Being here walking this earth and literally seeing the legacy that you are creating. So I think that's amazing and something that we often don't point out. We often don't celebrate that, but I think that we should, right? You're able to see what your future generations will be able
Yes.
to eat off the fruit of your label for, right?
Right,
So I think
right.
that's very amazing to be able to get
Absolutely.
to witness. So I'm glad that you're still here, right?
Yes.
You're still here, you're still showing up, you're still creating, right?
Yes.
And inspiring other people to grow. So let's talk about some of the challenges that you may have faced when it came to writing this last book, Poetic Alchemy, right? So what were some of those challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
Um, the biggest, well, one of the biggest things was that I was writing in isolation, meaning I didn't have a whole lot of community around me, not in partnership with anybody, didn't have a whole lot of friends locally, not a lot of family locally. And so, sometimes when you're around people and they know that you're doing something, you get the rah, rah, go, 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 go. And I didn't have that.
Okay.
I had to be self-motivating. And as motivating as I think I am, it
Yeah.
was very challenging at times because someday I wouldn't even look at the book. Like I knew that I couldn't do it. The other thing about being in isolation and what I was calling, well, I know now it was protective custody. I actually kind of took myself off the charts, if you would, for a lot of different reasons. But when you don't have that rah-rah or people to hold you accountable, or being able to say, I'm not going to do this. And if there's nobody to tell about it, there's nobody that's going to remind you those things. And it was different for me. It wasn't a space I'd ever been in before. That was challenging. And then again, because it's such a personal book, I had to relive stuff. So that means I had, I got my my therapist on standby, got my best friend on standby, because at any given moment I knew there could be a meltdown. There could be a place that I found myself not able to quickly recover from. But one of the great things that happened in the challenges was that I absolutely could see the strength in what I was doing. Meaning, you go to the gym all the time and you lift weights and you really don't know you're strong until you go to lift something. And so literally I found out that, okay, all of these treks that I had to do in some of the darkest places of my life, in my world, was absolutely giving me power. And so that turned something that was negative into a positive, which I think always happens. The other thing that I think was very important is that I was writing a poetry book, but I didn't call myself a poet. So I felt like a little imposter with that. And here I am writing my first book, and it wasn't a little book, it's over 200 pages. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, who's going to buy this? Who's going to believe you? Even though I had the background, I'm a therapist, I'm a motivational speaker. It almost seemed like it wasn't what I should be doing with the poetry in it. And I think that's some of the reason why I actually added the self-help book to the poetry, is to kind of give me some validation, if you will. Like, okay, this, I know I know, so I can get away with this. But yeah, those were
So
challenges.
what was it like to infuse then the self-help with the poetry? And do you think so you said you did it as a way to get like that validation, right? Do you
Mhm.
feel now like, hey, I am a poet?
Oh, it's funny. I just took a performing arts, like for spoken word artistry, is a poetry
Yeah.
boot camp. And I felt so out of the way. I'm like, oh my goodness, because these people I'd been watching, like they were real poets as far as I'm concerned. But I'm clearing out a difference between a poet and a spoken word artist. If you can write a poem, and all of us can write a poem, you can be a poet. And so yes, I'm very much embracing that a little bit more. The infusion came, the intersection came when it was necessary. So I've heard it said, and I've said it before, that some of the artists, recording artists, make some of the best poems and the best music when they like in the trenches, they fell out of love, or
Yeah.
they in love, that type of thing. And
Yeah.
as I began to watch poets, I'm like, so much of this stuff is personal. In my head, it was a natural intersection once I got into it. Like, okay, this poetry is what happened with me. It's my story. This
Right.
work is what I do in my assignment. And it was just a natural click. Literally, it was just about how I would put it together. And once that came to me, it was on and popping. Those things just kind of clicked. And I think that it works very well, if I must say so myself.
I love that. I love it because poetry is so creative, right? And to be able to take some of the things that you go through personally and infuse
Yes.
that, I think so many people will be able to relate to it in a different creative way, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And you get that from the different people that you get feedback from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had people to say, oh, I was able to take and replace this with that. And because I didn't, I love listening to poetry. I wasn't a reader of a lot of poetry. So I was just so amazed that people could extract the things that they were able to extract just from the poems themselves.
Yes.
It still is just powerful to hear for sure.
So I don't know, right? You wear a lot of hats. You are a motivational speaker. You are a social worker. So how have you been able to take all the hats that you wear and kind of infuse that, right? Infuse it into your author brand now as a new author.
Right. Well, here's what I'm going to say, is that it actually is just one hat. It's a God hat. Um,
Yeah.
because all of the talents and all of the gifts I've been given has come from,
Yes.
and the assignments have come from God. And I think that um I wouldn't have ever, when I became a social worker, my first job or my first professional gig, I didn't see any of what was happening or what is happening to my world now. It's almost like a graduation of sorts. Like, okay, you can do this. Now you can add this onto this because all of what's happening is a combination of those. So I'm not ever just being any one particular thing. The
Right.
poet, I think, is a little bit sideways, but I've always journaled. I've always, wrote and done columns and things of that nature. So it's absolutely been, I don't feel like I'm wearing a different hat. I feel like I'm wearing the same hat. I just got it tilted to the side.
Okay. Yes, I love that. I love that. So how do you think poetry contributes to personal growth and healing, right? How did that contribute to your personal growth and then for someone else?
Oh, great question. Here's what I know about poetry now is that it is healing. As a therapist, I would absolutely say to people that, write, be creative as you can to kind of get the things out. And there's a process of being able to take something from your head and your heart and put it on paper. And there's another process of reading the things that you've put on paper. For me, it was healing because it was a way of processing. So when I wasn't with my therapist, which seemed to be only 2 hours of the day because I seemed to be with her for the other 22 hours. When I wasn't with her, when this thing would hit me, poetry would just kind of literally ooze out of me. And I wasn't a poet, but I was a person that journaled and I wrote. It was healing in that I got to see things churning. So you got to see the part where you skinned your knee and it was bleeding uncontrollably. And then you like, okay, you got yourself together and you got a freaking Band-Aid and you put the Band-Aid on and like, okay, then I got that together. It was like this coming together, almost like you being able to expose yourself in this very vulnerable way and knowing somehow it's going to get cleaned up. It's going to be transformed into something that is going to ease your pain. And I think that once we're clear, and I know that I'm clear, I'm so very happy now that I'm clear that when something happens, I instantly have the thought, this is not, they say trouble don't last always. Baby, baby, baby. I can feel it now and I can take a hit knowing I am not going to feel this thing all the day long, all
Yeah.
the month long. When I was writing that stuff in 2019, I just felt like there was no end. And it
Yeah.
began to be healing as my poems sounded different. The difference between the part where I was talking about my hurt versus my
Mhm.
healing versus my transformation, all of that without my permission was healing.
Yeah.
Putting the pen to the paper was healing. Being able to say the stuff out loud was healing. Being able to reread it was healing. It still is healing to me because
Yeah.
I've come a long way. And some of these things, I'm not going to do it. But in my head, I'm like, I could rewrite this. And sometimes I'm looking at things like I've learned and grown so much. This felt like this then, but this would feel totally different now, the person I am now. So it's been a blessing for sure. And I think that it will for other people. I think other people, no matter what the loss is, it primarily is about resilience. And
Yeah.
it's about the relationship that you should always have with yourself. And so I'm posing questions for you to get to know about how to identify your emotions and how to be self-aware and how to use defining moments to be able to catapult you into the greatness that you have growing on in the future. And I think all of us could use that. I don't think there's anybody that I think could be exempt from, okay, you don't have to read it. I think everybody will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the analogy, right, of being able to see what your writing was when you were going through and then
Yes,
when you've healed. And I
yes.
think that's a testament to growth, right? I know you often say growing through those things.
Right.
I think it is. And that's the great thing about journaling. So you mentioned that you often journal, right? So if you just take a look at where your writing was like
Yeah.
less than 5 years ago and then where your journaling is now, see how far you've healed, right?
Right.
See how far you have grown. So I love that. And I think it's a reminder to me to go back and look at some of the things I wrote 5 years ago, right? I feel like I'm standing
You
in
say that.
some answered
That
prayers.
right. One of the things that I always tell my clients in my head, if you're not rereading your journals, you're missing the most
Yes.
valuable part of journaling. And almost always, and I've always kept a journal for a long time. And what I usually do is every year that I graduate into, I burn those ones from like 5 years ago.
Okay.
But I reread everything, because it's definitely your way of seeing your resilience, your
Yeah.
transparency, your ability to be able to bounce back, your strength, the places where you were weak at. I was able, once I discovered I was a codependent, I was able to go back and go, oh my goodness. So here I thought I was the bomb and I was leading the way, when in all actuality, I literally was following them behind people, doing
Yeah.
what the people wanted me to do. I would have never ever tripped up on that had I not gone back and been like, oh my goodness. I mean, from having a baby to moving out of the state to my occupation.
Right.
Like somebody telling me what to do, and I just kind of went along, extreme people pleasing. So yeah, it's powerful. Reread your journals, people.
Yes.
Reread your journals.
Yes, I'm glad that you really pointed that out because I think especially as, when we get ready, we go into a new year, right? We reflect on where we were
Yes.
and where we want to be. And journaling is a phenomenal way
Yes.
to reflect.
Sure.
Right? It's a great way to reflect. So I'm glad you touched on that. I think that's
Yeah.
important, right? So, how has your background in social work and your creative spirit shaped your perspective as an author?
Wow. So in my head, I used to do a show called Conversations with Angie Harvey. And they were, before podcasts got to be big, it was on E3 radio, and I used to do scripts, and it was writing, and most people wouldn't call in or ask questions. So I would have to come up with the entire hour of
Oh, wow.
content. And I thought to myself, Angie, so you keep saying, I don't want to write a book because that's be too much. Da, da, da. And I'm thinking to myself, Angie, you were writing a book every week for 5 years, Um, because as a social worker, we learn to write, we write case notes and they had to be specific. All of those things, as I look at, because people now on podcasts ask me questions, all those things were, because God is just got jokes. All those things kind of fed into the other, like learning to write, learning
Yeah.
how to be factual, learning how to be able to look at a situation and sum it up. All of those things poured into what ultimately came out to be this book, Poetic Alchemy, being able to really and truly know what you're looking at, know what you're feeling. Oh my goodness. And as a social worker, I had to do just that. I had to be able to see what you didn't show me, and and hear what you didn't tell me and assess the situation. And that's exactly what Poetic Alchemy is doing. And it was for me. But then when I began to write the intentions, a lot of questions were questions that I had to answer. But many of those questions were questions like, what would you ask somebody sent before you? What would you want them to know? What do you think they could extract from this? And I was able to pull it out, pull it up.
Yes.
Absolutely was intertwined. And now I know on purpose because, God is almighty.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so I always like to give advice, right, for someone that's listening and thinking about writing a book. So what were some of the challenges that you faced when writing? And how did you, well, I think we touched on how did you overcome those challenges, but when we think about wearing the hats that we wear, right? What were
Mhm.
some of the challenges with living your everyday life, but then also trying to figure out, okay, how do I walk this author life, right?
Oh, goodness. Do we have to go there? It was because I had this tape that was recorded by other people that said that, who do I think I am? Who do I think I'm better than other people? I absolutely struggle with that daily.
Wow.
Like, okay, then how am I putting out this information? And I got, this tape playing. And it's something not being when you're not able to operate in the space that you're speaking about. So if you're
Yeah.
writing a book about romance, depressed, or you're right, you're writing a book about resiliency and suicidal.
Struggling. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was absolutely a challenge for me. And so just what I would love for writers to know is that it's in those spaces and places that we get some of the most profound work that we're supposed to put on paper from. And so I did not fight the fact that, again, I didn't think that I would be here physically to see this book be published. I did most of this book and other things that were amazing, depressed and suicidal.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad that I was able to stay the course in
Yeah.
knowing that this is what was supposed to happen. I think that's just powerful. It's powerful, and authors need to know that. Many of the things, and it doesn't make a difference whether you're writing fiction, nonfiction, horror,
Right.
whatever it is. So much of what you need is in those spaces and places that you go that's gonna feel uncomfortable. Somebody gonna be trying to talk you out of it. Again, who am I to be writing a self-help book and I'm, curled up in the middle of my floor crying, sucking my thumb. But guess what? God uses everybody for many things, and just don't write yourself off because of what you're going through,
Oh,
because absolutely there is a need for it and you'll be able to use it. I believe that about definitely about authorship now, because I had to do just that.
yes, absolutely. So how does it feel, right? You are now an author. What is that feeling like?
Oh my goodness. So many different things. Like, I just got used to signing my autograph. I'm like, oh my goodness, like that's just overwhelming to me when people say it. And sometimes I even try to cheat and sign it beforehand. And some people, they want to see you put the signature. Um, to see, I went to see my sister over Thanksgiving, and she was sitting in the corner on purpose or by accident reading my book. Like, that's my sister reading my book with my picture on it. And all of it is just, I'm just amazed. I'm amazed. I'm pleasantly overwhelmed. I'm so very honored. And the more people that it actually reaches, um, I don't know that I ever gave any thought. And I've been in front of hundreds and thousands of people, but it's something about somebody holding your book with your words in it, with your story in it, that just catapults you to a place of just sheer giddy.
Yes.
Right. And that's where I am. Every time I get an order, every
Yeah.
time somebody email me or text me, um, and it's just giddy. I'm just giddy about it. Yeah, it's not, I would say it's not a better feeling in the world, but every time I say that, God one-ups me and gives me something better. So,
Yes, I love that. So what's been like one of the most impactful moments that you can remember so far on your author journey?
um, oh, it has to be when I got my first books. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what was profound about that. As a recovering codependent, I'm people pleasing. So I'm doing things for other people. And now that I'm recovering from that, I'm very, very in tune to when I'm operating in a place of me. Those
Okay.
books came to a place and a space where there were not people to celebrate me.
Yeah.
And I did not open that box. I saved that box till I got to a place where people would go, "Oh, what's in the box? Oh my goodness, that's your book." That type of thing. Um, but the piece that was most profound and impactful about that was it showed me my growth, in that I wasn't upset or mad about not being able to do it in XYZ. I was excited. I was able to prolong because I have horrible delayed gratification, and really and truly wanting something for myself, which
Yes.
is, just it was just all such a great impactful moment, and probably had less to do with the actual book than it did the journey to be open,
Yes.
taking the first look at the book. And I can just remember kissing it and hold it up like, God, I did this for you. I did this for my sister Pam. Like, yes, and it's gonna do exactly what it's supposed to do. And I believe that with all my heart. And that's gonna be impactful every day. I get to allow it to be impactful every day.
Yes, absolutely. So I actually just started asking that question on the podcast, and I think the reason is that it gives you that moment to like self-reflect. And a lot of the authors are saying that like when I first got my first batch of books, that feeling is like unmatched.
Right,
When you
right.
get that first batch of books, it takes you back through that journey from where you were, right? When it was just a thought in your mind, nothing was even on paper yet or typed up. So it takes you through that entire journey. So it's an amazing thing to reflect on. So I love that.
Yes, yes. And again, I allow it to be impactful every day. I look at that book
Yeah.
every day and go, you did that. You
Yes, you
did
did.
that. You did that.
Yes, absolutely. So are there any upcoming projects or events that you're able to share with us?
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely tell everybody everything that's growing and growing is happening on angieharveyspeaks.com. I got classes coming up. In fact, I have a loss group support group that starts tomorrow. I have a vision display party that we're going to be having in January. I'm open to hosting vision parties for other people. I'm
Yes.
also going to be doing a book club that I'm actually going to facilitate myself. So it's going to be an author-led book club. And I'm excited about that because the book is powerful. And I believe that I'm able then to set in my head, set the stage for how these things could go because it's a different kind of book and it's a heavy book. And yeah, everybody, you're not gonna be able to just jump into it and just have it
Right.
happen. But there's many, many great things happening on the horizon. I absolutely would encourage everybody to go to Angie Harvey Speaks. I update the website daily, and so everything is up to speed. But any place where there is the ability to be able to help grown folks grow up is where I'm going to be at. And I definitely am open to being invited places and
Yeah.
definitely open to people joining me wherever I am.
Absolutely. I love that. So what's next for you as an author and poet?
Oh, author and poet. Believe it or not, I have given some thought to what I'm not sure whether it's going to be a second edition. I'm not even sure how that even works in my head, but because I'm learning how to perform poetry and do different things with it, my thought is, and all of the poems that I wrote are on napkins and paper towels and back of things. And in my head, I thought about that would be cool if you could actually take some pictures of these different things. Of the poem, here's the poem, the way it's written, and here's the poem, what it was written on, and that type of thing. And here's Angie performing the poem. In my head, that could be a whole book itself. So it's kind of going on.
Listen, like the creative will start going in my
Oh,
head
absolutely,
as you are saying that. Yes.
absolutely. So next poem will be a QR code that will take you to a video of me performing that poem. That's if I get to a place where I could, because I know some amazing poets and I shouldn't compare, but my goodness, like there is, yeah, like I said, I don't even know that I could, what'll happen, but
It's
we'll
in
see.
you. Yeah, it's in you. It's there.
We'll see.
We're just gonna speak life to that thing now.
There
It's
you go.
there.
There
I
you go.
love that.
Yes,
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 yeah. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing about your journey. And also like the importance of journaling, right? I think that that's so important, especially as we are in a new year, right?
yes,
As we get ready to start reflecting on what we want our year to look like. I encourage everybody to start journaling,
yes.
right? Journal every day, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, journal. And then at the end of the year, go back and reflect so that you can see how much you have grown. And make sure
Absolutely.
you connect with Miss Angie on social media and all the amazing things that she has going on. So I want to ask one last question. So what lasting impact do you hope your books and your author brand will have on the world?
Well, one of the reasons that I am transparent, besides being obedient to the spirit, is there is nothing more profound than having a relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And so many people are disconnected from themselves and don't know themselves well and aren't able to even answer a question like, how do you feel without
Yeah.
saying fine, okay, and good, which are not emotions. It is my hope that the impact that the book will make is to introduce people to themselves and to allow them to be able to get to know themselves in a way that they never have before. And I believe that when you get to a place where you know yourself, you
Yeah.
know what you think, you know what you feel, you're unapologetic about that, you're able to express yourself. I believe that makes us just so much better. That elevates us, takes us to the next level. And when you take yourself individually to the next level, everything you touch grows to the next level.
Yeah.
In my head, that's what impact is. That's you empowering people. If I can empower somebody to connect with themselves and then be better, to be able to connect with their children, their spouses, their parents, their community, society, I'm doing my job. I'm doing my job.
Absolutely, absolutely. And listen, I think that we could just keep going on. There's so much that we can unpack here. So you
Yes.
have to make sure that you tune in for another episode because I'm sure that when the next book comes out, we will have you back on sharing even more. So I
Yes.
do appreciate you taking out some time to chat with me. Listeners, make sure that you go grab a copy of Miss Angie's books.
Yes.
I said before, yes. Connect with her on social media. Make sure you subscribe, right? Subscribe to her website.
You go.
Join her reader list so that you can keep up with the things that she has going on. She says she updates daily. So you want to make sure you go subscribe so you don't miss anything. And if you can, before we leave, if you can share how we can connect with you on social media and your website.
Absolutely. AngieHarveySpeaks.com is the website. Angie Harvey Speaks on all social media platforms, along with The Poetic Alchemy. But Angie Harvey Speaks will take you to all of those different places. All of that is up to date and valid on my website. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok.
TikTok. Yes, absolutely. I love it. Well, thank you listeners for tuning in for another Authors Impact Hub author Q&A. It's been an amazing, impactful conversation. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share and leave a comment, right? I'm encouraging everyone to leave a comment on something that you learned or think that you're going to walk away and grow with from tonight's episode. Until next time, take care.